at Stanford and master's at Columbia. But I initially went to Stanford with the objective of becoming a doctor. And so, as you can imagine, with Nigerian families, doctor, lawyer, engineer, that's really the what your family insists that you do. So I thought that I would become a doctor. But when I got into the program, I realized that it was not the direction I wanted to go. And so I changed, which was, I think, is really important for those who are also looking at their career. First, I did a master's in sociology, and then did the MBA with at Columbia. But what's most important here is that I also was looking around me to understand what are the biggest disruptors that were going on at the time, especially in Silicon Valley. And I happened on Facebook, which at the time was a company, and which is now grown to 65. And so I've been here for 15 years now to develop not just my product acumen, but also business development. And I think that this is really important. Multi-dimensional executives that are really supporting, especially the growth of creative industry. So that's just a little bit of context as to how I got here from my career development.
Bye. Elizabeth, thank you for joining us. Yeah, can you please turn on your video just so we can? Okay, I think she's still having issues. Before I was gonna ask Elizabeth this because I know she also in the creative industry, quite different from you in the sense that she was all the while in Nigeria and chasing the modeling career, it's a bit tricky. So like you said, you this course, but career path went. So what were the major challenges you faced at the stage of your career?
Oh, yes. So I started working in Silicon Valley. Imagine that. Hi, Elizabeth. Oh, I think you're talking, but
yeah, I think you said so. We can't hear you.
Let me know maybe if I should continue in the meantime.
Continue more. And then
okay. Okay, I'll continue in the meantime. So yes, what I was saying is that the most important and also most challenging aspect when you're working in Silicon Valley, especially at during the .com boom, is the fact that you're really and truly one of the very few, or sometimes even the only, either black women, and a black person, and definitely the only African that was really working in this sector, and so. That means that automatically creates a position where you feel as though you have to work 2 times harder in order to be able to prove your legitimacy, and also make sure that you're working with your colleagues to help them understand that the world, the potential in terms of consumer engagement is really limitless, and it's important that they build with a diverse point of view and not just building for the environment about which they're familiar. And so when I think about what I had to do and the time I had to spend to help my colleagues also understand that our consumers are diverse, and it's important to be able to step out of the comfort zones, especially when we're building different technical products or consumer products.
That's very insightful. Hi, Elizabeth.
Hi. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now. So we were just talking about career journey and the journey so far. I wanted to know what were the major challenges you faced at the early of your career.
Okay. When I started my career in 2004, there were loads of challenges because I just moved back from the UK and I thought I could set up the biggest modeling agency on international standard in Africa. But it wasn't working like that. We had issues with, model signing. Usually in the UK, when models get a contract, have a party. But I'll use Nigeria, for example, models had that issue. We had issues with advertising agency who were working with their family and friends for job instead of contacting modeling agency. We had issues with fraud, whereby international agencies will contact agencies, let me call them scouts in Nigeria, and tell them to, send models, and then they would take the money for tickets and visa, but they never send the models. We have so many issues, and I'm so happy today. Now everything has changed. Modeling is more recognized compared to back then. That you look at a model and think, a model, or does she do something else? So the whole industry has changed.
That's really must have been rough start. I can just imagine children, people's lives on the line, and then people are. So we don't have Roberta here, but we'll just. My next question is: industry is one of the key strategies for Africa. How can we boost in this industry? Who wants to take it first? Maybe Maureen can go ahead.
Sure, with pleasure. So the reality is that when you think about companies or startups that are funded, the startups that are funded are majority run by white males. So startups that are funded by women and also funded by Black people are very limited. And so if we're thinking about how we can give creatives, fashion, especially creatives, African fashion or diaspora creatives, clout, it's important to be able to fund their businesses. And that's the first point. The second point is that many creatives, they come with a creative point of view, which is great in terms of textiles, in terms of design, in terms of imagery. That's incredibly important to be able to build a brand. But what is also important is to have a right brain experience in terms of business management, because this is where, in my experience, a lot of designers and creatives, they get stuck because they don't necessarily understand how to run the operations of their business, how to run logistics, how to do their financing, how to make sure that they're investing in the right area. Marketing. So either by having a partner who's an expert on this topic, or ensuring that when you're creative building your business, you're not just focused on the design and visual aspects, but you're really thinking about what does it mean to drive growth and to build profitability when you're for the long term, which can be really tough when you're just an individual designer trying to receive funding and also create legitimacy.
I was gonna ask her because I know she in Nigeria for over 10 years. So I know how she was able to manage that relationship and run, and what strategy she was able to put in place. Save that question for when she gets back. She's back. Just 1 second. Hi, Elizabeth.
Yeah, hi, sorry, it's gone off.
Okay, so spoke about some of the challenges investments in this industry, and I was saying I know that ran a lit model look and it eventually blossomed to a lit model look Africa partnership, which was something with international, with a global you're able to manage that partnership. Okay. Let's go ahead then. I think I really agree with what you said in terms of people in this industry are just like, oh yeah, I'm creating this skill, I have that skill, and then effort in terms of like business development, strategies to actually. Now let's take it to another way. Now, how mindset? So how can a creative stay, but also think profitably and because the truth is that I feel like the industry is new, but for some people who have great employment, and I'll say like me too, it's easier. But if you're freelancing or you're just still trying, it can be a bit tricky. So what strategy do you think would work for someone who's new trying to get into this industry?
First thing I would say is to do your research. Do your research to understand what does it take to build a business for the long term, especially in retail, which is one of the most competitive businesses in the world. Because if you are able to research online, think about, looking at what brands have been successful, what mistakes have they made, what successes have they had. That will also inform you as a creative when you're thinking about developing your own business. And the second piece is that we also, people like you and I, we're in a position where we do have this oversight. We have this experience, thankfully, and we're able to provide guidance and mentorship to brands that are starting up, that are just starting up, that are just building their businesses, to designers and creatives, for in forums like this, especially, where we can share guidance about how to create a business plan, share guidance about how to look at your distribution channel, share guidance about how to understand what retail network you want to build up. Do you want to focus on wholesale, or you focus on B2B or B2C? What does that do in terms of your profit margins? Like, these are business acumen points that really must be taken quite seriously when creatives are thinking about building either their brands or their own businesses. And so we're in a position of where we can be privileged, where we can be supportive and provide this insight to ensure that as African designers, African diaspora designers are creating their businesses, they're not just thinking of the lovely, beautiful imagery, which is of course very important, but they're really thinking about both in terms of environmental, but then also financial sustainability, how the business can last for the long term. And then the last thing I would say on this is also, what can they do, or how can they take advantage, of course, of digital communications and marketing to ensure that they're able to build the best possible brand awareness with consumers that are relevant for them. We know that people are spending more and more time on Facebook and Instagram being a creative vector of communication. And so it's really important to think about, who do I want to connect with, where is that person spending their time, and how can I create that storytelling so that they can really understand the spirit of their brand.
Elizabeth, I see you have real issues. Maybe you can turn off your video and we can just go with audio. Maybe it'll be better. Can you hear us? I'll just proceed. Ask about how can, like you already answered that, structure and all. I know, so I'll give myself. When I was about 3, 4, 5 years, I wanted to do everything. I wanted to do this. I wanted to write. I wanted to be an editor. I wanted to do this. I wanted to do everything. And to be honest, give my time to this, give my time to that. But I feel like I had this aha moment where I'm like, okay, you know what? You have to kind of streamline and go in a certain path. You can grow faster, because if you're dilly-dallying, you find out that a lot of things are weighing you down. I want to ask, kind of structure their talent, and how can they to say, okay, this is what works for me, and pursue. Because I also notice a lot of people are doing everything. If you're doing music, you're also acting. So doing this, you're also a football analyst. I feel like get forgotten because everybody is doing everything and they don't really remember you for any particular. What is your advice or recommendation creatives on trying to structure their talent?
Yeah, it's a very good point, because if you think about the rise of digital internet, social networks, the reality is that, I don't know if it's a good reality, but it is, the possibilities, I would say, have become a lot more endless, in the sense that you can start your day off saying, okay, I create my own business. In the afternoon, I'm an influencer, and in the evening, I have a podcast. And so it's a very rich mix of opportunities that can be available. But at the same time, there's also a sense of fatigue, consumer fatigue associated with that. Meaning, when consumers see you, they instinctively, they want to recognize what you stand for, and what is your brand, what is your brand association. And so if you're dabbling in a lot of different things, and especially, we're all human, not able to give the time and focus that you need on one specific on one specific subject and one specific idea, business, or brand, that also creates confusion from the consumer point of view. So it can be challenging for them to understand, okay, who are you? What do you do? And why should I be interested in what you have to say? And so my recommendation there would be to think about who's your brand. Who is your brand? What do you have to say? What value do you have to communicate, and what do you stand for? Because at the end of the day, this is what's really going to resonate in consumers' mindsets and their point of view. They're going to say, "Okay, I know this person, I know this brand, and this is why I identify with them." And this is it's even more important now in this COVID times because. The idea of brand loyalty is even harder and harder to drive because we've just seen how consumer preferences and behaviors have evolved through COVID. And what's also very true is that consumers are more likely to associate with a brand or be loyal to a brand if and when they have an impact or they have a strong voice when it comes to social justice, environmental justice, or sustainability points of view. So not just focusing on, I would say, purely selling products, but thinking about what is your, as we say in French, raison d'être. What do you stand for? Because this is becoming more and more important when it comes to consumer association and loyalty with brands.
Sorry. Thank you so much. I think those are really key points. I'm so happy that we're live streaming to have access to the content because I feel like a lot of have this problem and it's you see it every day. As this and then you end up as that. So it's really interesting. I would say that's a given, and gratefully with platforms like Facebook, there's really nothing like location barrier. The Nigerian creator, I can reach the US, I can reach Korea, I can reach anywhere I want. But with unfamiliar territory, there can be issues with, things like compensation, the way they're being treated. I know sometimes when some international brands want to work in Nigeria or in Africa, there's difference with. So what are some ways they can protect themselves from being exploited in the global industry?
Yeah, though this is a very good point because I would say that we're at a tipping point when it comes to the development of the fashion and luxury industry. Because if you think about maybe 15 years ago, for example, China was in the same position in the sense that today, even though Chinese and Asian consumers can represent 40% of a luxury brand's revenues and sales, 15 years ago, that was not the case. But what brands did was they truly invested in the consumer, being able to tailor their approach to the consumer because you have global brands, mostly global European luxury brands for sure, but they also make sure that they spoke and that they engage in a manner that the consumer really understood. For example, making sure that in boutiques you can have people who speak the language to facilitate the sales process, making sure that you can have both international events like Paris Fashion Week and then also have a repeat show, for example, locally in Shanghai or other cities. And so this is really what has created this affinity and this connection with Chinese brands, Chinese consumers, and luxury brands. Now, what does that mean for Africa? It's not necessarily a copy and paste strategy in the sense that what was done for China doesn't necessarily work in Africa for a number of different reasons. One, when Africa is not a country, it's a continent made up of many different countries, different languages, cultures, styles, ways of dressing, ways of doing makeup, etc. So it's going to be important for brands to be able to tailor their strategies to the consumers, their potential consumers in their key markets in Africa. But the great thing is that there's a desire, especially for African grown and African made talent, and this is something that I'm also very passionate about and interested in, which is why I'm happy to be with you today. And so we need to do two things, a two-pronged approach. One, how can we ensure that luxury brands can penetrate when it comes to retail and distribution networks in key African markets, of course, the biggest markets like Nigeria, South Africa, Ghana, etc. Then also looking at the Anglophone and Francophone world, because the two approaches in both of those worlds are really quite different, and it's important to be able to cater to the language nuances. And then on the opposite side, we need to also support African grown talent. So we have talent like Kenneth Eze in Nigeria, who was a runner-up for the LVMH prize. We have Tebe Magugu, who's the winner for the LVMH prize, and they're coming up and being very concrete and very strategic in the way that they approach their business development. Kenneth, who just did a collaboration with Karl Lagerfeld, a global international brand, which is absolutely fantastic. So you have a Nigeria and also a French international brand. And then you also have Tebe, who's very strong in terms of his style sensibility, and also brands like Iman SEC from Senegal, who just joined the couture calendar in France. And so our responsibility, or what we should really be pushing forward, is to make sure how can we ensure that this African grown talent are able to integrate seamlessly into this mostly European fashion and luxury structure, because that's really the best way for them to have international presence, and to make sure that they're reaching consumers not just in their home market, but from a very international point of view.
I think that's important, and thanks for a luxury conversation. From your point of view, what are some reasons that brands hold back entering the, especially, I want to move to Nigeria, especially the Nigerian market?
This is perception, I would say, and others is logistics. Because in order to move into the market, there needs to be a retail network. And so then you have to think about building the stores, either building your own stores or working with wholesalers to make sure that you can have your product in market for the consumer to purchase. And so that aspect is still, I would say, it's very much still in development, because there hasn't yet been I would say, a strong investment in a retail physical space, which of course is a key part of the luxury experience, even though online is very important. The second piece is how to make sure that consumers also have this desire to purchase locally, because there's this idea, oh, I bought this in Dubai, oh, I bought this in Paris, oh, I bought this in London. And so there's a sense of lifestyle and, if you will, bragging rights that are associated with when Nigerian consumers, for example, purchase luxury goods. And so it's really important to create this high quality experience, which is the same as what you can find in Paris, in London, in Milan, and make sure that that can be localized in countries like Nigeria, to create that desire to purchase local. I think you're on mute.
I'm so happy cites Alara, but I think Alara has kind of opened up Muse in Lagos. They've kind of opened up, but post COVID, I really don't know how it's doing now, but I think it's still great. I think there's this platform that does do shipping from Nigeria. They brands and then sell it to like international. So I think it's pretty important what you've said. I'm so glad to finally have you connected with us again. So we'll just circle back to you. I really actually live now with us also. Beth, hi. Oh, network is really terrible. Okay, we can just still go on with the conversation. Okay. This was a question for Roberta, but since she's in here, I know this might not really be your forte, but if you have any add, do you think? Okay, Roberta's here, but she's in. Roberta, let me try to. Someone gets you into the speaker access. You're in the general access now. Add you to the speaker access now. Okay, so we'll just for now, and then we can go ahead. From your experience, you've watched the African creative industry through your career, and even the way we interact with platforms. How would you say that the industry is evolving in a good way, or we're still not quite need to be yet?
There's definitely room for development, but I have to say, especially over the past 2 to 3 years, the level of sophistication when it comes to creative expression, when it comes to understanding how to use social media and digital tools and e-commerce to build their business, the level of sophistication has been exponential in terms of its growth and evolution. And I think that this is really, especially in COVID times, when the rise of online commerce, for example, online luxury commerce is going to grow to more than 25% in the next year, in the next couple of years. And this is going to be something to really take advantage of, because you don't have to be limited anymore by the physical connection. And you're very right in the sense when you talked about what are the different companies that can support the shipping aspect. Because shipping across international markets, looking at duties and customs, etc., is a big part to making sure that any company that wants to sell, like an African creative company that wants to sell online, is really able to do so successfully with their consumer. Now, where do we go from here? What's the potential? I think it's up to people like us, myself being having this expertise with luxury brand communication and marketing, working with creators and designers and startups who are looking to build a business to help them build an even stronger network, taking advantage of the innovations, for example, like augmented reality, taking advantage of commerce tools, like looking at shops, for example, across our different platforms. When we can support our creatives to really understand how to build their visibility and build their audiences, this is what's going to have a direct impact on their sales and on their bottom line as well.
Elizabeth, I really hope you're in now. Circle.
Finally.
We're so happy to have you. We're so happy to have you. To circle back, because I feel like you have some valuable points in the conversation. I think one of which is really how from Nigeria, from Africa, can work with international brands, creative successfully for over 10 years with the Elite World Group. So can you please give us some points has worked for you?
I mean, working with it for the past 13 years, I think the first thing is trust. They've trusted me over the years, and unfortunately, we've had several issues with Nigerian modeling industry and with scammers and scouts. So obviously, I'm very into my African models. I mean, even though some are not really African, but stuck to that. This is my field, and this is what I'm doing. Just like they search for the Caucasian models in the Western industry, we search for, and I mean, I think it's really all about trust and also finding that brand that really wants to invest. African, for me, I would say making African models a priority and not in any funny way, or they come from Africa. The way they view Africa, like they have monkeys flying around, and but we're not like that. But my mom really take naturally, from airline to pick up. But I also have a few other agencies. When I hear the stories, I'm like, the models internationally. So I think partnering with and how you pace yourself with them, would help you.
Important, because I know while I was preparing for the conversation, I was having a discussion with my sister, and she was saying, "Oh my God, models are mistreated, all around the world." So I was telling her that I think it also coming from the agency. If you have like a body, an organization behind you that puts their foot down, no, this shouldn't be this way, and if not, we're going to pull.
Yeah.
And I think it also generally applies to creative industry, which brings me to my next. I want to hear from both of you. I think that we need, as a creative industry, and not just actions, but we have like the fashion industry. Do you think we need like a unified front or platform to kind of give us like said policy that we're not manipulated. We know what we're doing. That okay, this is what we're doing as a group. Do you think that's something that's important for the growth of this?
So first of all, I think the number one issue we have in Africa is PR. We do not have, sorry to say this, we do not have a good PR and a PR company that can help the entertainment industry and the fashion industry, right? Branding, marketing, issues that we don't have, and that's why industry will look at us and say, okay, you know, and then when they probably give us, like, for instance, if I would speak for an artist, if an artist is being booked internationally, they book the artist direct in a proper management company. So especially, you know, we don't have, you know, you see some of our artists, even models as well, you see them on social media, they're you know, there's no agency that tells them, look, you're a brand, this is what you should post, do, you know, and also next steps. I see a lot of models, a lot of artists, they, you know, they shouldn't be where they are. Let me use that one. So if we have a good fashion and PR company, the designers, the models, the a long way.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with. Yeah, no, I was just going to join on that and say I completely agree, because having this body, a governing body, if you will, is absolutely critical, and we've already seen it across other different markets. You have the CFDA in the US, you have the British Fashion Council, you have the Fédération de la Mode in France, you have the Camera de la Moda in Italy. These governing bodies are able to give structure, are able to give order, and also create a community, to be honest with you, concretely, either community or even funding for creatives that are developing their careers. And so now the question is, how do we build this out, and what markets or what when people are going to develop and build this out? Because as you said, it should cover, Elizabeth, it should cover the creators, it should cover models, it should cover brands as well. And having this kind of unifying force also will make sure that we have power and we have weight as a collectivity versus creators or other people that are working individually. And when you're working individually, it's so much harder.
Maureen, Elizabeth, before you joined back a conversation with Maureen, she really some light on the question, but I will modeling industry, how, apart from, I mean, having that body or that, or say they don't have cover, they don't have the cover of an organization, how can they protect from being exploited? Or is it only when they have them that they have some sort of protection?
I think as a model, there are times you say no. You know, I speak for my industry. We've had a situation whereby, you know, a company has obviously can afford to pay a certain amount of money. Doesn't say, no, pay this girl this money. And we're like, no, you can't pay this amount of money. This is daily pay is. And then, well, we're going. Now they go behind our backs and call this model, and oh yeah, you know, I want it. You know, so I think needs to say no. And I mean, sorry.
Okay, so no, I think that you were on the point. What we asked was, how can, apart from, without the umbrella of an organization, how can a model protected or protect themselves in?
Okay. I think about important. You know the rule, but now working without a body, even as much as an agency, we try to speak to them, they do what they want to do. I totally understand. Sometimes they're desperate to be on that billboard advert, they're desperate to be on a full cover magazine, you know. But I think what we need to do as agents, also their parents, which are is try to make them understand not to be desperate, you know, to know their value and know that you more than this amount. You can't accept it. sometimes you have to go to a job that you know, but you know at least you need the money. You know, I mean, when they do the billboard, they get complaint. Wow, I'm seeing my face, why I wasn't told this, you know, and they all Nigerians don't read contract. They just browse through and they sign. Later on, they start asking, oh, I didn't see this, I didn't see that. So certain things need to change.
We've talked about having that umbrella, but I feel like we also collaboration on structured trainings, learning is among other things. Can we use these? Like, what other things you, in your opinion, also need to further develop our Maureen?
Yeah, in terms of
we train our model.
Sorry, go ahead.
No. So
no, I was just gonna say say very quickly. Oh, I think we're running over. I'll let you go. I'll let you.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah, I think Maureen, you can go. Elizabeth, sir.
Okay, no problem. So what I was going to say is not just in terms of how to ensure that the value of brands is communicated and the worth is communicated. You talked earlier about pricing, how to make sure that when you see the products, the quality showcases that this is worth, and the craftsmanship behind it is worth a certain price point. So that's an important point. The second piece is on how to make sure that from a branding and communication point of view, that that consumers understand that this is high quality content. So this is not just about, you know, the textile that was created across the way, but it's really important to showcase the craftsmanship and the behind this. And it's this storytelling video showing the artisans who are doing all this work with their hands. That's the same level as what you can find in couture across global European luxury brands. So the storytelling about the intricacy and the talent that goes behind the creation of these fabrics or of these looks is really important to assure the legitimacy of African-made designs.
Amazing. Elizabeth, I think you wanted to go ahead.
No, training to it. It's really important. We train our models every 3 months. What I normally tell during the training, there's no modeling agency around the world that, you know, you learn by yourself to train them, and we educate them what's, you know, if it's a basic, tell them everything. So training is really the key in the industry right now.
I totally agree. So one final question, but Roberta struggles. She's trying to get in, but she's really having struggle. So I really don't want to end the session without her. But let's just take this question, and then probably when she comes, she can insights basically on how African Fashion Foundation is from Ghana throughout Africa and helping the create. Okay, so entrepreneurs and small businesses, cultural industries have limited resources and, you know, just the tools needed to build a brand. And I think at the earlier stages of this conversation, Maureen, creatives just know how to be creative, and then it's lacking. How can we boost our market access, entrepreneurs with suppliers, buyers, and investors, as well as strengthen the global value chain of this industry?
Create it. People who are in positions of influence, who are in positions of access, who can connect brands with the right private equity fund. You know, this is also work that I do as well. Is we need to create it, because if we're waiting for a third party to come in and say, okay, I want to invest in this and make it happen, it's not going to happen. And so it's our responsibility as people who are connected, who have relationships, who understand business mechanics, to create this way of working, because that's what's going to support the future of this industry. Because when we support our talents. That is what's going, and especially the fact that we come, the diaspora experience. I've spent 15 years working in Silicon Valley and worked across the U.S. in New York and California, and now in Europe. And so I have this Occidental experience and this diaspora experience. It's important to bring that talent back home, because if we don't bring that talent back home to support and to be very, I would say, very concrete in the guidance that we give to talents who are building their careers and building their brands, it's going to be very complicated to do that externally. So I think it's our responsibility to really give the opportunities that we can to creatives in Africa and in diaspora.
Thank you so much, Roberta. I'm so happy to join us. Like, I've been trying to make sure that you're in. I'm so glad you. So this question we asked was basically final question, but I want us to just circle, because like I said, I feel like you have much insight into the ground from Accra and through. So the question I would just want us to is how has
Hello.
Africa fashion? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Yes, I can.
Right off the board, how has African
Hello.
Fashion Foundation creatives in the?
Yeah, so thank you so much. And I was listening in while I was trying to get in, I was listening in on the conversation with Maureen and Elizabeth as well. And I would say their contribution was quite insightful, and it's really giving like in-depth information about what the industry, the challenges are. So I'll just add a little bit to just basically agree with what they were saying earlier. But the main issue that I see, and I've worked in 10 years in the industry since the inception of African Fashion Foundation in 2011, while I was still working with the United Nations. The issue that I see is that the creativity on the continent is not the issue. We have creativity in abundance. In fact, if you also look at some of the core values of making of a luxury brand, like craftsmanship, rarity, I believe that African brands can be luxury brands. But the issue is the lack of infrastructure. And when I say infrastructure, both tangible and intangible infrastructure are missing. Intangible infrastructure, one is education, putting in the right intellectual property. Like I think Maureen also shared earlier, just having the confidence, to be able to present your creativity to a wider audience in a way that is sustainable and that can also fit into the global scheme of things is also lacking. So what we have done, and then of course you have your tangible infrastructure, and I think the earlier panel was talking about this, like manufacturing, production, and all of these things that we're lacking, electricity. I think these challenges are faced in most industries that are on the continent, whether it's agriculture, agribusiness, or fashion. We still have the same infrastructure challenges. And I think Africa has a huge infrastructural deficit. And I know governments and, like the likes of AFDB and all of these big multi-private equity funds focus on bringing Africa the much needed infrastructure that Africa needs to be able to move its sectors, right? So fashion and manufacturing does not kind of fall short of this need. But the things that we can really focus on is putting these intangible infrastructures in place so that, because I believe that the creativity again it's not the issue, it's just the intangible. So things like IP, how do you protect your creation so that somebody cannot replicate it? And of course, if you're looking at it from an investor's lens, something is, I'll say, investor ready and can make a return on investment if they can see that, okay, this is protected, right, by IP, and this IP that you can actually invest in. It's not just of course, the person behind it is important, but the IP is also important. And we lack this in a lot of creatives don't have an education about the business aspect of their creativity. So they're creating, but then they don't have the acumen, they don't have a solid business plan, they don't have an exit strategy. They don't even know how much funds they need at what given time, because it's also important to know how much you need at a given time, whether you need seed, whether you need Series A, whether you need debt. All of these things are part of the educational process. And then accessing new markets. How do you package your items to meet buyers? Like when you're meeting with the likes of Facebook that want to present your work, how are you presenting your work to the audience? Because Facebook is not going to select you because you're an African brand and there's this whole African narrative, but it has to fit within what it is, their ethos and what they're looking to promote. So these are the things that we try to focus on at the African Fashion Foundation. And for 10 years, it's really focused on the intangible infrastructure the fashion designers on the continent need. Number one, we started with a fellowship program. We took designers from Africa and presented them to major fashion cities because we thought the education was lacking and they needed to be under big brands to really understand how things are done. And the first, of course, creative that we worked with was Kenneth Eze, that we took to LVMH in New York for 6 months. And so that has been our focus. Now, the three themes under AFF are number one, to cultivate, and cultivating means to help with the intangible infrastructure to build the capacity of designers. Convene is to bring people together because we find ourselves as, like, I would say, a foundation that brings all the players together. We, you know, there are manufacturers in the space, there are retailers in the space, there are creators themselves. So we need to bring everyone together. And the third item is collaboration. We focus on that, and you know, we want to bring people together to collaborate because you see a lot of collaborations with established brands, but then in Africa there's always competition. It's like, I don't want to work with this person, you know, this person stole my idea. But if we can overcome those challenges and work together, because you see, from the rest of the world, we're seen as just, they don't see the economies of scale. But the moment we start coming together and collaborating, and we're forced to reckon with, people will see the economies and we can then position ourselves for investments. So these are the three things that we focus on at AFF.
Roberta, thank you so much. I think you just used one question to basically go through all the questions that I had posed during this conversation. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I think the final question really was just how we can boost our market access to connect suppliers with entrepreneurs, buyers, and investors, as well as strengthen the global value chain of our industry. That was just the final questions while I go through to see if we have any questions from our YouTube live stream. Roberta, do you have any thing to add?
Can you repeat that again?
Oh, sure. I asked, how can we boost our market access to connect entrepreneurs with suppliers and buyers and investors and strengthen the value chain of our industry?
Right. So I always like to look at it from what we're doing. And because I guess I cannot be prescriptive and say this is what needs to be done. I don't think I'm an expert to be able to give that kind of advice. But what I can do is to talk from to talk from what our experience has been and what we're doing at the foundation level. So one key thing to me is to really understand the challenges we have and address those challenges. I'll give you an example of how this whole thing started for me. 10 years ago, I did a special issue magazine with Vogue Italia, the late Franca Susani, called Rebranding Africa. Well, Rebranding Africa, it was just at the very early stage where creativity was booming and this whole Africa Rising story had begun, right? And she wanted to present Africa in a very positive light because she had seen that the West portrayed Africa in a very negative light, and she wanted to change that, which was really like a noble gesture from her, you know, being in that position. So I worked with her as the project developer, and we did this magazine, which sold out in 2 weeks. That shows us that the creativity of Africa is highly sought after, but people don't really know where to go. They don't know where to buy your international luxury brands when it comes to, like, on international markets in Paris, in Italy, in London. They just can't find them. But there's, you know, they're yearning to be able to engage with African creatives. So we showcased these creatives, and then did a partnership with Youths to do 10 designers from Africa. Now, 2 weeks after that, you know, it also was quite popular. But a few weeks after, we got a lot of items rejected. And that is where I started looking at it. I'm like, okay, so the creativity is there, the demand is there, but we cannot meet the demand. We don't have the quality control and all of those things in place. But you see, in the global scheme of things, you need to be able to have structure, right? Retail has structure. There's a timeline for buyers, there's a timeline for you to deliver. And these are all things that African designers at that time needed to learn. And now, I mean, 10 years post this, we've seen a lot of big brands that are emerging and are meeting the global demands. But we still need to like put more investment into the space to be able to meet like what you're saying, like how do we access to market and create a platform for designers to access the market. I think there are lots of examples now that are coming in, like you mentioned earlier. I was listening in like the Alaris of this world, the Industry Africa, the Lots, all of these, the Temple Muse, all of these platforms are coming in and taking the opportunity and putting in the early investment to give the exposure and visibility to African designers. Now, another thing that I have decided to do or within is to create a platform for investments, you know, into businesses. And it's not an easy feat because people don't see the ROI immediately when it comes to investing in fashion or creatives, you know, on the continent. But we are looking at a way in which we can present social impact and risk adjusted returns to investments through what we are putting together. And we started off by giving grants, and now we're looking at putting in equity and taking equity into brands as well, because this is how, you know, brands grow, you know, with the right investments, with the right infrastructure, with the right partners that can ensure that they produce good quality items and can meet those markets. So just from my own experience for the past decade alone, I've seen that, you know, our challenges are quite endemic. It's not just, you know, you know, for us to be able to compete on the global scale, we have a lot of work to do, and we have a lot of work to do in a collaborative matter to help. And I like the fact that a lot of people are actually thinking about investments in fashion now. Just recently, a new fashion venture, brimming, was just launched, right? And you know, there's so many other people that are looking this. Eva Fund, there's so many other people that are looking at this space when it comes to investment. And that is what Africa needs. There's a huge funding gap for African creativity. And I'm excited to see that people are stepping in to really fill that gap. And in addition to that, we still need to partner with the platforms that are showcasing the talent. We still need to partner with the people that are looking at manufacturing and production, because in the ecosystem, there's so many players and everybody has a role to play in making it successful.
So much, Roberta. I'm really so excited with this conversation that was the closing conversation, because I feel like we have three diverse but very similar creatives. I mean, four plus me in the in this conversation. And really great job to everybody. I'm very inspired by everybody in this discussion. Roberta, great job with Africa Fashion Foundation. I think the Creatives Connect, I wish I was in Accra then. I would have really loved to attend. Someone asked on the YouTube live stream, how can someone be a part of the
We'll do it again next year.
Yes, I would really love to be there. So someone asked on the YouTube live stream, how can one become a part?
Yeah, so for African Fashion Foundation, just follow us. We are on Instagram, and on LinkedIn, on Twitter, Facebook, and then our info at africanfashionfoundation.org. We have a lot of programs coming up, especially this fall. We had a very successful retreat, and we made commitments during the retreat to make, number one, raw materials accessible to designers. We've delivered on that, and we've launched a partnership to be able to get supplies, fabric supplies to designers in a very short period of time, because access to raw material was a major challenge at the retreat. So we did listen, and we are implementing these things. We're also doing a collaboration, like a collective, because this was something that we decided to do. It came, Eli Kwam, who was at the retreat, came up and said, why don't we do a collection together? And we're doing this, and this collection is launching very soon. We also have our sustainability project, which is going to launch again in January. We had a successful one this year. So I think if you can follow us and see what we're doing, there's always an opportunity to work with emerging talents, established talents. We are launching 2 scholarships, one with a school in Italy and another with a UK school where I'm sitting on the board. So this is also giving a designer an opportunity to get a full ride for an education in the UK and also in Italy with one of the best, schools in Italy for fashion. So we keep, making, I would say, committing to making the experience for African fashion and fashion designers a good experience and giving them all the support and infrastructure, intangible infrastructure they need to be successful.
Thank you so much. Amori, I just wanted to ask, are there any exciting upcoming projects that you can talk about in terms of working with Africa or with creatives on the African continent?
Yeah, so we have two aspects that are actually very interesting across Facebook and Instagram. The first one is a program that we've launched called Buy Black. And so while it's not specifically to African continent, it's very
Yeah.
much pertinent because our focus is on supporting Black designers and Black business owners. And so our first initial entry into this was the Buy Black Friday campaign, which we launched in last year, so aligned with the holiday season in the US. But since then, we're actually launching a Buy Black forum, which is supported by Sheryl Sandberg as well, to ensure that that's Black entrepreneurs and business owners understand how to what are the key tools in terms of marketing, in terms of performance that we're able develop for Black entrepreneurs. That's the first one. And then the second one is we're going to be working on the second edition of what we call Africa Days program that we developed in earlier this year. So it's in May of this year, where we focused on really thinking about the creative industry. Speaking of how to support them, how to support creatives, which is a big strategic focus for the company. When you think about creators, when you think about commerce, for example. And so this is a program. Last event was in May of this year. We're working on the next edition, which will be coming up in the coming months. But even prior to that, it's important to know that we have our resources to which African creators can always access at facebook.com/business, where you can really understand what are the tools that as business owners, what are the tools as entrepreneurs that you can utilize across Facebook and Instagram to really improve your communication platforms and your communication structures, because you have a potential of 3 billion consumers and clients in front of you. So really excited about this opportunity to come.
Really excited, and I really didn't know about all of these initiatives. Really exciting times that we're in. I can't wait after this panel to actually go and check out a lot of these things, connect more with you all. I don't know if Elizabeth is here. I wanted to ask her because I know she just launched Future Face Africa. I wanted to ask her if she could give us any more information. Hi, Elizabeth. Oh, okay. She just left. Just to kind of round up the conversation, I know we've spoken way past our time. What does success for this industry look like to you? At what point do we get to and you're like, okay, we've done well. I'm proud to be in this creative industry. I'm really excited for where we are right now. Roberta, I think you can go first, and then Maureen.
That's an important question. Success. Success to me is not just, I want to see more Kenneth Ezes. I want to see more Iman Ayisis. I want to see more Makios. That is when I believe we are successful, because it's not about one person representing the entire continent. That's not success. I mean, when we talk about it in the grand scheme of luxury, of course, you have the Italian brands and you have the French brands. But what I want to see is Africa positioning itself in a very unique way internationally. That does not necessarily copy the West, that has its own unique positioning. Because to me, right, if we want to, where we can focus our energies is the craftsmanship. Because if you look at what I'm wearing, this is Adama Perry. The craftsmanship is quite unique, right, to the Senegalese culture where she's from. And if we can focus on that, we can make timeless, rare, pieces that can be considered luxury. And if we focus, even if that's all we want to do, and as a way to plug into the global luxury scene, that's okay. We can then build And when I talk about social impact and upward mobility, we can then take people out of poverty. We can drive our own prosperity as a continent. We can focus on economic development just by supporting African creatives. Because to me, the creativity is where we can create more jobs. When you talk about entrepreneurship for development, yeah, Africa has a huge young population, but how do you convert those small, I would say, innovative young minds to a way to drive the prosperity of the continent? Is through the creative economy. As this year is the International Year for the Creative Economy for Sustainable Development by the UN, these are the key themes that we should be, highlighting. Young people to be able to get jobs through creative entrepreneurships. Number two is hiring of women. Its creative economy tends to be a unique way to hire more women. So if you talk about gender parity issues, so success to me is when we've actually charted our own path that people can then follow. We start our own trends that the international, I would say, luxury or fashion scene will follow. That is success to me. It's not when we're copying the West and we want to do things according to their timelines, their schedules, their creativity. When Africa actually leads its own creativity in a sustainable way that also drives the prosperity and the development of the continent. And that is when you will see more people popping up. That's when you will see, because see, right now the focus is on the designer that made it to Paris, right? Or the designer that made it to New York Fashion Week. But there's so much that is in the middle that we're not focusing on. And that is when we hone in on the craftsmanship. Look at what people are doing with the weaving technique, for instance. Why don't we highlight that? That is unique to our culture and our heritage. That is how we can then plug in and teach the West how things are done. So that is when we develop those infrastructures and we highlight those intermediary, I would say, craftsmen. That is when we are successful as a continent in this fashion industry.
Very well said. I think I'll go maybe to add a compliment to that, Roberta, because I completely aligned with the points that you mentioned, and the two words that immediately came to mind when the question was posed was longevity and respect. Longevity in the sense that it's important to give our creators the tools for them to build their brands for the long term, to not just be a one-hit wonder, have a kind of a short moment in the spotlights, but to really think about how, you have brands that are 100 years old, 70, 80 years old, and these are the brands that are respected today. And that needs to be the case for African grown brands and designers and creatives as well. And then the second piece in terms of respect, so you made an allusion to this, the respect in terms of respect of craftsmanship, respect of the talents of the artisans that are really at the forefront in a lot of cases. Actually, are the designs that we see internationally are based on their work or based on their skill sets and their specialized techniques. So this is something that I'm very much passionate about. And so in the context of the job that I'm doing today with Facebook is how can Facebook also continue to support this? So I talked about the Buy Black Summit and just wanted to give a precision on that. It's August 24th. So it's actually in just about 10 days or so, August 24th. So it's an online summit. So people who are joining now can take a look at that, about how you can really think about structuring your business, especially tailored toward Black entrepreneurs. And we've built this program that I mentioned called Made by Africa, Loved by the World, because I think that this is really the foundation of how we can celebrate Africa's growing and ever present, if you will, cultural impact on the world as well. So these are topics that I'm really, really passionate about. And it's these venues, these mediums, and this for inviting me that can really help us communicate all the resources, all the learnings, the tools, and the skill sets that are needed to build long-term sustainable businesses that are respected and that are also showcasing the talent of which we have plenty, very much so on the African continent.
Much, Maureen, and thank you so much, Roberta. I really don't know the words of wisdom you both shared, including Elizabeth. It's just amazing, and I'm so happy. I've said this earlier. I'm so happy the conversation is recorded, so I can always go back and we can always go back and watch it and just learn constantly from what you've shared. I think that brings us to the end of today's conversation. I don't want it to end, but it's been amazing. I'm so, so grateful for you taking out the time today to join us. This was super, super amazing and insightful. Thanks to you, Maureen. Thanks, Roberta, and thanks, Elizabeth. I know your internet didn't really allow you, but we hope we can have this conversation some other time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, thank you everybody for tuning in to the Bella Ninja Style Summit 2021. It has been an amazing run from 2 p.m. today up until now. We are super grateful to all our wonderful speakers who came on board, from Omoyemi Akerele and Simone Cipriani in the first session, to Nkwo Onwuka, Ekwerike Chukuma, Sydney, Wakama, to Maureen Oluwole, Roberta Anan, and Elizabeth Iloho. I'm super grateful to you all for being a part of these conversations today, and for once again making history today with this very, very insightful panel. I'm grateful to my Bella Ninja Style team, to my Bella Ninja team, grateful to myself who hosted 2 panels, and Sandra who hosted 1 panel. Thank you very much, guys, and till next year, keep in touch with us on Instagram at Bella Ninja Style. Make sure you go on our YouTube channel, Bella Ninja Style, to watch all of these interesting content once again, over and over again. We hope that you enjoyed this session. You can email us at style@bellaninja.com if you would like to be a part of next year's session. But till then, thank you all so much for being a part of the Bella Ninja Style Summit 2021. Bye-bye.